Welcome to the Learner Center Collaborative Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Martin, and so thrilled to invite you to my conversation today with Sonn Sam. Sonn is the National Director of Partnerships at Big Picture Learning. For 2 decades across our nation and abroad, he has worked with communities to build sustainable, student-centered learning ecosystems. Love that. He has collaborated to create new measures and learning frameworks, develop structures for individual learning pathways, build small learning communities where every child is seen, heard, and respected. He has systematically integrated authentic, real-world learning experiences, expanded young people's social capital by connecting them to professional experts, and helped young people move closer to their passion and purpose. All of this is in an effort to help them live fulfilled lives as defined by them. We are going to talk about all of this today, but first, welcome, Sonn.
I'm so excited to be here, Katie. Thank you for asking me to be a part of your podcast. I'm honored to be here.
Of course. So glad to dive into all of this. So we're going to start from the beginning. Let's, give everyone a chance to get to know you a little bit and
For sure.
share some of the experiences that have shaped you and led you to the educator that you are today.
Thank you so much for starting there. Yeah, I usually start off any introduction with a shout out to my heroes, which are my parents. Their history is my history, and it's who I am. And so I first always start off saying I'm the proud son of genocide survivors. So I am of Cambodian descent. Between 1975 and 1979, it was a really dark age in a dark time in my country, but also for humanity. We lost 2 million of our people, including my oldest brother, Sam Sam. I share that story because, again, my parents are my heroes, but it's part of the story that evolved when we all came to the United States. So my parents really suffered with PTSD, but with a young family, brand new land, new country, they had to get into survival mode and provide, and that's what they did. And I'm super, super grateful for that. But part of that story is just that my brother and I have been by ourselves as early as I can remember in my education. Um, my brother, who's 1 year older than me, Sonn Sam, did really, really well in school. He almost had like photographic memory.
Mm-hmm.
So in a rote learning system, which is our education system, he did really well and he was rewarded for it. He was seen for it. He was celebrated. The report cards, the honor rolls, the principal, like he was just seen in a way that I was never seen. And I wasn't that kid. I was very much a square peg in a round hole. And the system at a very, very young age told me that I wasn't worthy and that I wasn't smart. And at a very young age, I accepted the fact that I didn't get the smart gene. So that's how I sort of navigated through school. I just realized that I was given a deficit, and that's sort of how I navigated through life. Um, it wasn't until I was in high school and where I truly started to live the BPL sort of mission and values without even knowing it. So I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, on the West End on Hanover Street, which is one of the most violent streets in Providence. In my community, especially from war-torn countries, gangs were pretty prevalent. I knew I didn't want to be a part of that. So my best friend and I found a free local hip hop dance studio that was called the Carriage House, that was put together by this amazing family called the Jungles, who wrote grants to provide free hip hop classes to urban youth. And on Tuesdays and Fridays, every single week throughout high school, my best friend and I hopped on the bus, traveled 30 minutes to get there, and it was our safe haven. But it was my first example of truly engaging in something that I deeply was passionate about. I was connected to mentors who cared about me beyond school, that cared about who I was, my history, my future, really pushed me. Um, I was part of the dance troupe, so it brought me into the community setting. I was in elementary schools, really pushing the anti-smoking campaign at the time in the 90s, dating myself a little bit.
I'm
Um,
right there with you.
yeah, yeah. But beyond that, those 4 years were really powerful for me because, while in school, I continued to really, really not do so well. Outside of school, like I found my own apprenticeship and started cutting hair. I was in the theater program. I played organized sports. I was a TV anchorman. Like there were so many things that I was exploring, which was truly developing social network. It was developing my skills on how to solve real world problems. I was leading in my community. So many things that I was developing as a young man in the world. But then I share this story senior year. I sat in my homeroom. Mr. Whitford, my homeroom teacher for 4 years, incredible, incredible educator. He started putting cue cards on top of everybody's desk. I didn't know what it was. But finally,
Mhm.
when I turned it over, it was our class ranking. And out of 220 seniors, I was ranked 172. So the bottom quartile of that senior class. So the backdrop of all of this is as a young man coming up in the world, I was doing a bunch of stuff in the community and learning and really thriving outside of school. But when I came back in school, it was the same message that I wasn't smart and that I wasn't worthy of an education like everyone else. Um, I applied to 2 colleges because that's what all my peers were doing.
Mhm.
I got into one. And so I started as an international business major, whatever that was. Like I have no idea. We had to check off
Check
one,
the
and that's
box.
yeah. We had to check the box before we entered into school, and that's what I did. But sophomore year, this is a pivotal moment in my life because I was in a macroeconomics class with Dr. Sharif. I remember this as clear as day.
Wow.
I had an epiphany. I just sat there, looked around the class, and I was just like, "What am I doing here?" So I got up. I left in the middle of his lecture. He stopped lecturing. He looked at me leave. And then once I left, he continued. I walked straight to my academic counselor, Miss Joanna Ravello. Shout out to Joanna. Um, and this is a pivotal experience for me too, as a young man in this world. Um, Joanna Ravello was the first educator in my life that ever asked me, "Son, what are you passionate about?" So I was 19 years old
Mhm.
before an adult educator ever asked me that. And I really want folks to think about that sometimes because how many of our young people are truly asked that question?
So
But
few.
sec Yep, but second to that though, there's space inside our system to really cultivate and support that passion
Right.
in an authentic way. And really like that question just landed on me like a ton of bricks. And I just, I don't know, I've always loved working with young people. And so she was the one that said, "You ever thought about being a teacher?" And I just shared with you my education experience.
Like,
And so
no.
no, my first response was no, but long behold, that's how my journey began. And I started my school of ed in secondary education and social studies. And by senior year, another story. This is how I got into the Met, which is interesting. And I promise I'll be fat. I'll fast forward it quickly until we get
I'm
there.
loving it. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Um, so, just like everyone, like senior year, everyone does student teaching.
Hmm.
And all at the same time, there was a big career fair where all the student teachers went throughout the different universities, the
Hmm.
School of Eds, and everybody was vying for a job, and all the districts were there. So I played the game. I got suited up. I brought my portfolio, and after 2 hours of pretty much just failed opportunities to impress anyone because I didn't fit the mold, I guess,
Hmm.
I was ready to leave. And right at the exit, there was an African American male. He had these Malcolm X glasses on. He had this Cuban white shirt on, and he had jeans on. So he really stood out from, what the scene from that job fair. We caught eyes. He called me over. I learned later that this was Wayne Woods, a principal at the Met School, which is the flagship school of Big Picture of the Liberty Building. And once again, another person who asked me a profound question that just like rocked me. Um, he asked me, "Son, you are committing your life to serve young people. Why?" That was his first question to me. And I was just like, whoa, like, dude, no, in the last 2 hours, no one's asked me that. So
Right.
I wasn't ready.
That's telling.
That, yeah. And so, I mean, besides trying to get my thoughts together, I responded to him, and he asked me, more profound questions, and right away, I just knew that this is someone that I really needed to get close to, and so I started the process, and that's how I learned about the Met High School. I interviewed. I was hired. I went in as an advisor, so that was an amazing experience. At our schools, our babies stayed with us for 4 years, but really, it's for life because the relationships that you build extend beyond graduation. My advisory are my friends now. Um, so after I graduated my babies, I was not ready. Funny story. My first year as a teacher, as an advisor, I was in. This was January of my first year as a teacher. I was in my principal's office, Charlie Plant. Shout out to Charlie Plant. And literally for about 20 minutes, I was crying in his office saying, I need to leave the profession. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this is crazy. And he just let me boo-hoo. He like a good mentor does. He's just like, yeah, go ahead, go ahead. And then at the end, he asked me, son, you ever thought about being a principal? I was like, no, Charlie, have you not been listening? I'm leaving. And then, just like a reassuring mentor, he's like, no, you're not, son. You'll be fine. You've hit a rough patch. Here's what we're gonna do. And he really coached me through. But this is the thing about social capital and like mentors. Charlie saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And daggone it, he was persistent. And so when he said he wanted me to be a principal for the next 4 years when I was an advisor, every opportunity he could, he said, hey, did you sign up for your admin program? Did you do it? And then finally I gave in, like junior year of my kids' advisory. I started the program and I finished it. And then I was in no sort of preparation. Like, I wasn't ready for it, but he went to open up a big picture school in Newport, and it opened up for me, and I became principal there. So I was an administrator at that Met School, Met P Street campus for 4 years. And then I went to New Jersey, and I led a big picture academy inside a comprehensive high school. And that was one of the best experiences I ever had because it was one of the hardest experiences I ever had. And really, it's the reality that we all face in the work that we do right now, meaning that a lot of us who are learner-centered advocates, we're walking into very traditional compliance-driven systems and bringing in our learner-centered hats and really trying to navigate that space.
Sure.
And it's not for the faint of heart. Every single day is an uphill battle. Every single day is a test to your value system. So what are you willing to die for, and what are you willing to compromise? And so I was grateful for that experience because it really, in real time, it taught me what was possible in the traditional school system. And so getting through that prepared me for the next position, which was a regional director. And I was a coach pretty much of schools implementing learner-centered designs in the South and the Midwest. And then here I am, like, things were moving really well. Just when I thought things were going really well, Katie, I finally understood what I was doing in the South and the Midwest. Big brother Carlos Moreno, you may know him.
Yep.
He's been my ally, advocate, big brother for the last 20 years. He said, that's cute what you're doing in the South, son. That's really cute. Now let's do this on a national level. And I'm like, dude, I was just hitting my groove, man. But again, social capital, mentors, they see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And so here I am today, and here I am talking to you. But that's how I got into it. But wait, let me just say this.
I have so many questions, but go ahead.
my last thing. Also, the reason why I do what I do every day, because for all my square peggers that don't fit so neatly into the school system, every time I look at a young person, I see me. And so I'm here to really not only see the brilliance in all young people, but create spaces and systems so that we can cultivate and honor the brilliance in all young people, because all young people are brilliant. So that's why I do what I do. Okay, I'll be quiet. Sorry.
No, I mean, there's so much, and really I'm struck by, of course, you are a brilliant storyteller. Have had so much experience, and clearly outside of the system, so many people have seen that brilliance and been able to pull it out of you, help give you your next steps.
Right.
And it's amazing when you can see, right? Like where what's possible when you have that mentor and that person who can really find out what you care about and bring you along and find those opportunities. But I'm also there's a lot of juxtaposition in your story,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
with your brother and I made a note about the comparison. I
Yes.
often compare myself to like my best friend growing up. She was in, the gifted and talented program, and I was
Mm-hmm.
in nothing of the sorts, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
like, go along, and I always thought, I'm not smart. She's smart. She got great learning experiences. I got to fill in the bubbles and fill in the worksheets. And from an early age, also, I just felt like this was so meaningless. And I could tell that there was something more. I just didn't know what it was. And your story of like not feeling seen, not feeling a space in this square
Mm.
peg in a round hole. I think so many kids come in as a square peg, right? And some
Yeah.
are better at like shaving the edges, trying to fit in, shedding who they are.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and those kids need to be seen also, but really I love that you've dedicated your life and this is your purpose because it's so important. um and just being able to see what's possible. So excited for you to share that story and so grateful. There's so many moments I was just moved by, and it reminds me those simple questions you can ask people,
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
powerful they are, right?
Yes.
Just stopping and
Yes.
asking those questions instantly takes you to a new level and creates those connections. So
Right. Right.
that's
Right.
a thing I'm just trying to remind myself of also is just continue to ask those questions and what people want to do. And I think the last thing that just resonated is how many kids get through their schooling system never being asked, never really understanding, and how many of them go into adulthood
Right.
still not knowing, right? They're
Right.
still checking the boxes, so to speak, in doing
Mm-hmm.
jobs that you might get a paycheck, but not necessarily loving or feeling fulfilled,
Right.
which is also a loss for them and for all of us.
Absolutely. And I think we see that in, really just our friends and our networks. I can share, I think when it comes to purpose and fulfillment, like I have friends and we all know like, this phrase of being in the rat race. I think we're all a part of it.
Mhm.
All of us are really trying to provide for ourselves and our families, and we get caught up, but never really do we get a chance to a moment to stop and reflect. Like, what is my purpose?
Mhm.
Like, what are the gifts that I bring to this world, and how can I leverage them to make this world a better place? So I could bring not only fulfillment in myself, but really to improve the world in the process. I mean, really, like that conversation just doesn't have because we've got to, go to work to pay the bills, and it's a really sad space to be in. And I say that not only as an outside, like I lived it, like we all lived it. And I was a part of that for a long, long time. And again, this isn't to point fingers at anyone. This is a systemic issue.
Right.
This is a cultural issue that we're all sort of a part of, but there is a better way.
Sure.
And education is a part of it, but also outside of education, like we as a society need to ask the questions and prioritize like what happens to all of us when our purpose is aligned to our work every single day? Like, what
Right.
does it mean when we're thriving like every single day? Like, that's the question that I really want to ask us as a community, because that's what our education system should be aiming for, right?
Right.
Um,
When
so
the
yeah,
adults are thriving, they create those opportunities for young people to thrive and can understand how to create those systems. And I mean, a lot of what you've done together with the community and big picture learning schools is really flipping that traditional model. So there's
yes,
a lot of
yes.
people who may or may not really know what big picture learning is. So let's give some context. What do I see? What do I experience if I go into a big picture learning school?
Amazing. So I'll start off with two things. One is one quote that Elliot says all the time that really resonates with me, that's really powerful. He says, students are the curriculum and the community is the school. The way the system is set up right now, we spend billions of dollars around the what, meaning the curriculum and the assessments, leaving out the most important person in the equation, and that's the young person.
Mm-hmm.
And they, being the curriculum, meaning they offer a lot into this equation, meaning they offer their interests, their curiosities, their passions, which all can be leveraged to help them prepare for their future. But the way that schools are set up, there isn't an authentic system to cultivate that. So that's one, students are the curriculum. And the community as a school really refers to, we have a system built to keep students inside the building, inside classrooms, and inside the, the line seats. And like, we are literally policing young people's bodies every single second of their time in school. That is the most morbid system that I can ever imagine. Because we as human beings were meant to move. and part of that is freeing the restraints in schools, opening up those doors and understanding that there are local experts all around us, community assets that are looking for opportunities to give back to the community by mentoring young people. We've proven that with over 115 schools nationally in 27 states and 150 others internationally. There are communities from urban, rural, you name it. But there are adults that, if asked, are really excited to support in some form or fashion to really give young people an authentic experience in their learning. So that's the first thing I want to say. And the second thing, really, so the secret sauce for big picture, I'll say it right here. Three things that come together in our design. We surface students' interest.
Mm-hmm.
We connect them with adult professionals who share that interest. And we engage them in meaningful work that has impact. That's it.
That's it?
That's it. That's it. And so that's the goal. But inside the school, we try to build up the structures that allow us to do that. And there's usually 5 ecosystems that we try to build in our schools that sort of helps us achieve that goal. So the first thing is one student at a time. So there's got to be personalized pathways for young people that they can really take an interest and asset approach and develop learning around the things that they're interested in. So all of our students have individual learning plans. And they sort of are the curators of that learning plan. So in the beginning of every quarter with their parents and their advisors, we sit around and we articulate what students are interested in learning. So individual pathways for young people to pursue their passions. That's the first system. The second thing is an advisory system. So a small learning community that consistently follows the young person for a set amount of time. Sometimes it's 2 to 4 years. And it is a safe place where they're seen, heard, and loved. If for one day, if their presence is not there, someone's picking up the phone call and saying, "Where are you?" And the advantages of a small learning community like that, I mean, yes, there is research evidence to support that, but you and I know, like, you don't need research to support you on that. But it's a space really for young people to get the support that they need from a social emotional standpoint, but also really from an academic standpoint, but also for them to work on the projects that they're working on in the real world. The third system is we help schools build a real world learning portfolio. So every local context is different. So internships, externships, community service, service learning, dual enrollment, leaving to learn excursions, like all those things looks differently.
All the things you were doing outside of school as a high school student that where you were thriving.
Correct.
You're bringing those into the school to allow students to navigate those and allow them to see their strengths, not as separate from school, but as part of it.
Correct. And everything that they're doing and learning is on their learning plan, which back home, we give them credit for it. And the best way to value our young people for their brilliance in their learning is to credit the learning that's happening outside of school as well.
Right.
So that's the connection. And then We have interest-driven project-based learning. So there's a ton of amazing PBL happening in the world. We just push it a step further, meaning that once young people have the muscles to do high quality project-based learning, they get a chance to develop those projects for themselves. So that's what we mean as far as interest-driven project-based learning. So whatever real-world learning opportunity that they're engaged in, they have a space to really design what that project and what that learning is. And the last thing really is a system for authentic assessment. So we are a competency-based network with our own learning goals. And so with a competency-based system, of course, moving away from Carnegie units, a competency-based system really allows us to truly deliver on our one student at a time, truly deliver on the learning-centered ecosystem. So that's the first. It's just a framework around learning goals and competencies. But two other things that really help build the infrastructure is one, presentations of learning. So at the end of every quarter, our students stand up and they have to teach what they learned.
Sure.
In front of their peers, their parents, community members. And it's at a time where they get authentic feedback for their work and their learning and their progress. So there's something powerful that happens when you see a young person stand up and share their best work, but also take critical feedback around the spaces that they need to improve on. And lastly, I'll just say a documentation of growth. So we're a portfolio-based school, network of schools. So a lot of our schools have a portfolio-based system that tracks the students and their learning, so that you could see the whole picture. So yes, we are just as interested in outcomes and products, but honestly, the process for our young people is equally, if not more important than the outcomes. So you put those systems together, and that's what we help schools build in their school. Yeah.
So there's a few things that I just want to dive into because some people who are not familiar with this, we know that if you haven't seen it or experienced it, it can feel like that's impossible to do. And which you said it is not, because in your network, you have many schools across many states in and out of traditional systems. And there are many other school models that do
Yeah.
similar things for young people.
Mm-hmm.
So a teacher who might be listening or a principal who's in a traditional system and they're like, a personal learning plan for every student? I can't even grade the assignment, the tests I give.
Yeah.
How do you help them understand it's not just a technical shift of all of a sudden, but what is the role of a teacher or an educator, an adult in this learning ecosystem? And how does that differ from, I am a teacher, this is my classroom, I'm responsible for 30 kids moving through, each
Right.
class.
Right.
Like, how do you
Right.
shift that mindset? And technically, how do you shift their workload?
Yeah. I would ask a community who's interested in developing or even just curious. The one question I would ask them to ponder as a community is, why is the system set up the way that it is?
Because
And
we've always
I
done it that way.
and I think that's a real question to start the juices flowing, because the reason why I say that is we as learners ourselves have to think deeply around how the system is set up, what helps our young people be successful and what doesn't. Like, we need to have an honest conversation with ourselves and the system, because I don't think we can truly sort of develop these new systems without having that conversation first. Because I share this with you. Of course, this seems impossible when you take a look at the current system as is and you hear about what we're doing. Of course, the first reaction is just like, that's impossible.
Mhm.
And that's fair, and that's a fair reaction. So I want to say to all my educators out there, if you're listening, that is 100% fair. What we're talking about is one student at a time, and the system that we're in is one size fits all.
Mhm.
There's a disconnect there, So the reason why I say start there is because then it asks us to take a critical look at our system. And then when you take a look at our system and you put your young people first and talk about what are the things that needs to be in place to help them thrive and be successful, then we begin to start thinking about what are the system level changes that we need to make in
Mhm.
order to move in that direction. So before we like whether you rock with big picture or not, like this isn't like a big picture thing. This is more or less of like how can you help
Human
your
thing.
young yeah, it's how do you help your young people thrive, you know? And listen, the one thing I'll say to educators, like you know your young people better than anyone, you know? But I think it really takes a community to come together and do that self-reflection and really take a look at the system. I think starting there is the first sort of process.
Yep.
But then yes, in this sort of, and I'm channeling Elliot right now because he just cussed me out last week when we were in Winnipeg, uh, because I was trying to explain our theory of change, and he said, "Son, it's not a theory of change; it is a practice of change."
I love,
And
very
and
direct.
he,
I love Elliot.
yeah, and he is so smart around that because truly, what he's trying to say is any change happens through action,
Mhm.
meaning that whatever you are doing and putting into place, it evolves. Your practice evolves by doing it. And so we could sit here and theorize for the next 37 years, but if we're not doing anything, it just, it's not, nothing's going to happen. So really it's his way of saying, listen, folks, enough talking. Like we've got to do something here. So
Right.
choose something and start working, and the work will evolve out of there. The practice will evolve out of there. So that's my encouragement as far as for any teacher, educator listening right now. You know your kids better than anyone. Really ask yourself, like, what do your students need to fully thrive? And then have at it, you know, like really,
Start
really think about,
start testing ideas.
yeah, and start testing ideas. And then for us, yes, we've been doing it. Like what we offer is a proof point, and what we
Mhm.
offer is a couple of things. One of the things that I empathize because I was part of a system myself for 7 years. I was part of a system. And one of the things that once you're in the belly of the system and it is compliancy driven, everything becomes automatic. Like you put blinders on and it's just like, this is what we do. Right. So literally, I was a cog in that system as well. So I know what that feels like. So I want to say I'm guilty of that as well. Um, so it's hard sometimes to sort of like step out and sort of see, but I highly, highly encourage anyone who's super curious. It's an open invitation for you to visit one of our schools or visit one of the learner center schools. Why is that so powerful? Because you can listen to all the
Right.
podcasts, you could go to all the workshops, you could go to all the conferences. Nothing, nothing will be as powerful as you going to a school, a learner center school, walking in the shoes of young people, having them share with you their projects, going to their internship or their real world learning experience, sitting with an advisor talking about what are the different dynamics of an advisor role versus a teacher role, talking with the principal as far as how are you leading, training for your staff around this learner centered environment. Nothing will ever compare to that. So the next thing I want to say is get yourself out there because right now, so again, whether big picture or not, there's a bunch of folks doing really, really good work, my colleagues, my friends, um, that you can visit, that you can really just take a look at, because that will give you a perspective that the other pieces cannot. So I would say that as well. Um,
That's a big piece of growing, right? Like just mental models. If so many people have been educators, gone through the system, they're continuing to do what they think they're supposed to do.
mhm,
And, it's not malicious, not trying to hurt young people, but we're like, this is just the way it worked. So,
mhm,
like you said, removing the blinders, getting out, seeing something is so powerful. And I just want shout out to Elliot, like learning by doing so much. We can sit and plan and plan and plan all we
right,
want, but until you really get out and test some ideas, you don't know what's going to happen. And of course, it's going to be crappy when you first test it, right?
of
It's not going
course,
to work. And that's the piece too, is people are so afraid of, well, I tried it. I made an effort and it didn't go well. So now I got to
right,
revert back to what I've done. And we have to say, no, no, no,
right,
that's just the very first step. We have to
right.
keep testing these ideas. So the other thing I want to push on that I know people are thinking, besides like, is this is impossible? Like, can we trust young kids? Can we trust young people to know what they want to do, to make decisions? Like, that's a fundamental shift in belief when you go into most schools. There is very
Yeah,
little for trust. You sign out to go to the bathroom, you have to raise your hand to talk, you have to walk in straight lines, even in high schools, right? The bells dictate
yeah,
what you do and where you can be.
yeah.
What does it look like if I'm on campus or, with a young learner? What are
Hmm.
they doing? What are like how do I what are their experiences and can they be trusted?
Yeah. So this is another analogy that Elliot teach me. Um, how does one learn to swim?
Just by getting in the pool.
By swimming, right?
Yeah.
But before that, I just want to say we start off on the shallow end. We build up some skills, some muscles, some form, some technique, and gradually we move into the deep end. So this is no different for our young people. And also, I want to say, like, sometimes, we really live in sort of like, if I say one thing, it means that I don't support or believe in another thing. I just want to debunk that, especially like when we think about learner-centered education and like traditional education, it becomes like this sort of all-out war in philosophies and like it's not true. And the common denominator around this is what I want to say is good teaching is good teaching. So the same way that a high quality educator is walking a young person through a project that's happening in their, I don't know, US history class, right? The way that you're building muscles from beginning of the year and the questions you're asking and the depth of rigor that you're pushing by mid-year and at the end of the year is very, very similar to like real world learning. So let me be very concrete. For the first semester, we have curriculum that we are building the muscles for our young people around how to interact with the real world. So we're talking about professional etiquette, language, decorum, writing resumes. We're doing mock interviews, like all those things, the social emotional learning aspects, all those things are preparation to get them ready, right? There's a curriculum side. But again, for a gradual release. So there's going to be so here's the thing about one student at a time. You make processes for the whole, but you also make room for the individual.
Love that.
And that's one student at a time. So what do I mean by that? So in the beginning of the year, I'll give you a clear example how we get young people ready for the real world. So I use this example a lot because it's real and it's happening in our schools. Ninth grade, we develop key partnerships with community organizations. One, the food bank. Okay. The reason why I use the food bank is most communities have a food bank. The second reason is it's a very high oil machine. And the reason for that is because they have a very clear vision and purpose, and they need to make sure that they get the resources of food out to the community as soon as possible before it expires, right? So when you go in, there's a clear task, there is music blasting, there's people supervising. So it's a very structured time for our young people. And it's fun, like, the young people get out, this is their community service side, right? So they're in the community, they're seeing what it's like to be in a professional environment. It's safe, very low hanging fruit as far as responsibilities, but they're doing a service in the community and they feel great about each other afterwards. So that's the real world learning side. Back home, the English, math, science, and social studies teacher are joining forces to develop an interdisciplinary project connected to what's happening at the food bank. So, for instance, on the topic of the food bank, what do you want to talk about? Food scarcity, poverty and its connection to nutrition, organic foods to marginalized communities, food production, marketing, obesity problems, like you name it. But the difference is we're not talking about this curriculum who's telling us that by October you need to cover this on this day on by Friday. We're literally connecting this real world experience and authentically connected to students' interests and passions and what's relevant in that community right now in an interdisciplinary kind of way. So a school can develop two or three of these partners. I say four, and here's why. Because if you break this up, you can rotate students in all of your 4 quarters. You could have four groups
Mhm.
with these four partnerships, and every quarter you rotate it. Now, the young person is going to a food bank. The young person is going to the elementary school. The young person is going to a local business and learning what it's like to run your own local business. So now, this first year, you have groups of young people out in the real world, back home doing interdisciplinary projects, and they're all building their understanding and skills around real world learning and project-based learning, right? So that's how you sort of build those muscles. But the one student at a time is you're going to have a subset of young people on day one. Listen, Katie, Miss Advisor, love you. I love what you're doing, but this is what I want to do. I work with my mom. I got 4 interviews set up. I'm going. And that's where you have to really, really know your students, you know, of course, but you have to make room for those young people as well.
I love that.
So it's really one student at a time. But yes, so I want to be super clear. The common denominator to all of this is good teaching is good teaching. And gradual release is, I didn't invent gradual release.
Right.
You know,
I'm,
it just,
I'm
so
so glad
okay.
you said that, because I think that that's again a misnomer, that it's one way or the other. And when we know what we know about research for years over years, relationships, gradual release, explicit direct instruction, you're talking about teaching these skills. When a lot of people say kids these days, they don't know how to talk to people, they don't know how to write a letter, they don't use capitalization and punctuation, but are they taught in a way that is relevant and meaningful and authentic, and then get to
Right,
practice those things? And I think that's where
right.
we sometimes miss the mark in a
Yeah,
more traditional setting, is we're talking about it, but the doing doesn't always get to happen. And so
yes,
young people don't see themselves in the curriculum or what the learning objectives might be, although they might be relevant. They don't see how they fit into it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
All right, so many good anecdotes and examples, and I could talk to you for hours, but we're going to head into rapid fire. I got some questions for you. uh,
sure.
so first one: what is one thing we should stop doing in education?
We should really stop emphasizing standardized tests. Point blank, period, stop it. Um, it the reason for it is it does not give weight and value to all the brilliance, the whole child. And what it really does, it marginalizes a lot of our young people. It only measures one aspect of their brilliance. And when we use it as a holistic measure of young people, we're truly doing a disservice and harm to our young people. So, and I say that because that is of most significance, because um, assessments drive practice.
Yep.
And if the assessments don't change, we don't develop the ecosystems that we need to honor and value the brilliance of all young people. So yeah, we need to stop standardized assessments. And there are clear examples of other assessments that we could use as well. So yeah, another meeting, another time.
I know that's a whole other topic, and for sure. What's one thing we should start doing?
I think I'm just gonna stay on brand, y'all. Yeah, I'm just gonna say, like, we need to come together. There's 2 things that are really optimistic to me that the energy is really, really strong behind. I think competency-based learning is truly one of the mechanisms with which we can develop learner-centered ecosystems. It really gives us the opportunity to truly do things one student at a time. It is our pathway in order to do that. So I would say, like, in addition to really making a concerted effort to developing new ways to measure and valuing other things and what we measure, but I think really leading into competency-based learning as a way to value and credit all of the learning and the brilliance of our young people.
Agree. What's one thing that we should keep doing?
Mm. Um, I'm just gonna say this: loving on our young people. So whether, like, I'm not here to argue with educators. I know there are different models that we all sort of coexist in, and the different systems we're in. But one thing that should stay true no matter what is our love for our young people. I mean, I'm gonna go back to that question that Wayne asked me, and I really want your listeners to really think about this question, because at the heart of it, it should be love, but like you are committing your life to serving young people.
Mhm.
Why? You know? And your answer plays a big role into ensuring that all young people deserve, like, or receive the education they deserve. Like we're a part of that. So yeah, I would say keep loving on our young people because they need it more than ever, man. So
Yep. Thank you for that. What are you personally focusing on or learning right now?
mm, my God. I'm leaning into heavily, like I want to put my money where my mouth is. I personally just said we should stop with the standardized tests and we should develop new measures. So right now, I'm really leaning into that. And one way of which we're doing that is, uh-oh, did I lose you? Okay, sorry.
Oh, I'm
Um,
good.
so our schools in Australia developed a system called the International Big Picture Learning Credential, which is a competency-based framework, which recognizes literally the work that young people are doing, and we're able to credit it. We partnered with the University of Melbourne, with statisticians there, psychometricians, I mean, found a way to give value and weight to teacher evaluations, student evaluations, and mentor evaluations. Um, it develops a digital portfolio that belongs to the young person so that they can carry that with them forever to document their work. But also, it's a way to really give credit to what the skills that they've developed during their time in school. And so, what I'm leaning into is really bringing that to the United States. We have a pilot going on right now. We have several schools in New York and Washington State, and it's in motion right now. So I'm just putting it out there. If there's anyone interested in thinking about new ways that we can measure the brilliance of all young people, we are piloting this, and it's an invitation for all those that are interested. We true after almost 30 years of doing student-centered learning, like we're not nearly where we want to be. But this is one of the ways with which that can really put some wind in our sails. So that's what I'm leaning into right now. It's really developing different measures.
I love it. My colleague Brianna is in the middle of writing a competency-based reporting playbook and leveraging all those models. And so I want to make sure that you two connect because
Would love that.
some great models and she's finding out some opportunities and challenges. And so definitely want
Yes.
to definitely want to highlight those. All right.
The,
One last question to bring it home. What is your hope
yes.
for the future of education?
Again, I'm just gonna circle it back to what we started with. I just really, really hope that every young person that enters our education system in America and really around the world, that there are things in place for them to look at themselves and love themselves, and to know that they have value in this world, that they are capable of learning and of great things, and that we just have the systems and structures in place to really cultivate that. So that's my ultimate wish in the middle of all that, that every young person through education grows a deeper learning of loving themselves.
Well, Son, this has definitely been a highlight of my day. I'm so grateful for this
Likewise, my friend.
conversation. And
Likewise.
thanks for your stories. Thanks for your mentors who have continued to push you to be in the place you're meant to be so we can all learn from you and with you. Grateful for your work in this world and look forward to more collaboration.
Yes, ma'am. Listen, thank you for the compliments. It means the world to me. But you are doing incredible work in this world as well, my friend. You're someone I admire, so I very, very much look forward to working with you as well. So let's keep going.
Let's do it.
All right.